Hi there, this is Jonathan Ginsberg, and this is part 3 of my video series about reaffirmation agreements in Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Part 1 I talked about secured debts, what is a secured debt, and what makes a debt secured, difference between secured and unsecured debts, and security interests. Part 2 I talked about reaffirmation and what it takes to reaffirm a debt in bankruptcy, and why you've got to be very careful about reaffirming and the downside to doing so, and even an alternative to reaffirmation, which is what I call keep and pay or stay and pay, where you continue making payments, keep your property, but you're not doing so under any kind of contract, and there's some risks associated there too. So this segment here, I want to talk about some of the issues that my blog readers have brought up. And again, I get a lot of comments about reaffirmation, and it seems to be that the biggest problem is that a lot of these folks did not understand fully what they were doing or not doing, and they were surprised. And my motto in bankruptcy and really in law practice in general is no surprises. So if you go into reaffirmation, do so with your eyes open. If you don't go into reaffirmation and you decide just to keep making payments, understand what that means as well. So let's talk about the different scenarios and what could happen. So let's start with if you don't reaffirm. Again, if you don't reaffirm, you can do many cases what they call stay and pay, and that would be you continue making payments to the lender and you hope that the lender would rather have your money than the property back. And certainly in the current climate, lenders have a lot of property on their inventory, they have cars, and even if they repossess a car, by the time they sell it at auction, they're going to get less money than if they got from you. So there's really a built-in advantage for lenders to let you keep your property and keep making payments on it. If you don't, they can always come get it, but there's a better chance that they'll get more money if they let you keep and pay. So a lot of times we find lenders are pretty cooperative in doing so. However, they won't give you any kind of certainty about it, and that's the downside to it, is that I've talked to a number of lawyers for the car lenders, for example, and I'll ask them, will your client agree not to repossess my client's car as long as he keeps making payments? Well, we don't know what we're going to do, and keep making the payments and we'll see. So they like to leave their options open. So I think that there's a lot of uncertainty if you do the keep and pay. Again, the longer you go that with making payments and not having problems, the better. The longer the payment history, the better. And of course, we'll give you our perspective about our experience with various lenders. I've not seen too many lenders play games where they agree to accept some payments, they take 3 or 4 payments, and they pick up a vehicle or start foreclosure, but realize that loans and notes get sold, and you never know what the next owner might do. Another downside to keep and pay, and this is the biggest one I hear about, is that if you continue making payments on your secured item, your car, your house, furniture, whatever it may be, but there's no reaffirmation agreement, those payments are not going to contribute to the positive credit history. It's not going to help you rebuild your credit. So I've had a number of people tell me that they had a house, they kept making payments on it for 5 or 6 years. Lo and behold, it's time to refinance or to buy another house, and the credit does not show they've made a single payment. All it shows that mortgage was discharged in bankruptcy because of course the promissory note was discharged in bankruptcy. And there's really nothing you can do about that. I mean, other than I suppose to keep your own records of making payments and submit those records to the underwriter to try to get a loan. But for the most part, you're not going to get any credit for those positive payments. So my thought is that if you're going to do a keep and pay on a mortgage, the best thing you can do is once the bankruptcy is over, as soon as you can refinance, the better, because you want to start showing some positive benefits from making those ongoing payments. And again, I've had people tell me that they've had trouble qualifying for a mortgage because they show no more. All their credit report shows is that they discharged a mortgage in bankruptcy, even though they made payments for 5 or 6 years. So that can happen. Be very wary of that, and realize that your credit positively will not be impacted if you don't do a reaffirmation agreement. And again, it could go years and years of payments. It won't make any difference whatsoever. Now, let's talk about what happens if you do a reaffirmation agreement. What are the positives there? Well, obviously the first positive is that if you reaffirm the debt, your ongoing payments will show on your credit report as positive things. That you made the payments, that you were responsible, and that when it comes to rebuilding your credit, it's going to make your life a little bit easier. So it'll be easier to qualify for a house or a mortgage down the road, a mortgage or a car payment down, car loan down the road if you reaffirm. So that's the main positive thing about reaffirmation. The negative, of course, is that once you reaffirm a debt, there's actually a 60-day cancellation period, but once you get past the 60-day cancellation period, that debt is permanent. You cannot undo it. So you reaffirm your car note or your house note, 3 months after your bankruptcy is over, you lose your job. Now you have really no recourse. You can't, you've gone ahead and reaffirmed the debt. You're obligated again personally. You can't file bankruptcy again. You can't file Chapter 7 for eight years after the date of your first filing. And so you're potentially going to be subject to getting sued for deficiency balance. It's pretty rare to see that happen with a mortgage. It does happen sometimes. It happens all the time with cars, sometimes with other secured items, boats, even furniture sometimes. So if you reaffirm a debt and then you lose your job, you got a big problem. You can find yourself with a lawsuit and wage garnishment and so forth. So what I would tell you is that if you're thinking about reaffirming, really think long and hard about A, do you really need this property? B, how likely is it that I'm going to keep my job? I'm going to have the resources to make the payments. How long am I going to have to pay this? Again, if it's a vehicle and you got a year and a half left, I'm not as worried about it. If you got 4 years left, it could be a problem. And at the very least, you should think somewhat about what happens if you should lose your job. Because again, lenders at that point are in the driver's seat. They have no reason to work with you, to cooperate with you. They can pick the vehicle up, sue you, and you really have very little option in terms of bankruptcy or anything else. So that's the downside to reaffirmation. So again, if you go into it with your eyes open, whether you choose to reaffirm or not, that's fine, but just realize that there are pros and cons to each one, and I think most of the pros and cons are going to be premised on the stability of your future income and your circumstances, and whether it makes sense to obligate yourself again, and are you going to need credit going forward. So those are the thoughts about reaffirmation. I hope this three-part series has been helpful. Any questions, use the blog contact or the website contact form. Be happy to answer them. Or of course, give us a call as well. For now, though, this is Jonathan Ginsberg, and we'll talk to you soon.